Thanks for joining us for our next installment of our small group series. Chad, would you go ahead and read for us today?
Yeah, starting here in Mark 1:21. And they went into Capernaum, and immediately on the Sabbath he entered the synagogue and was teaching. And they were astonished at his teaching, for he taught them as one who had authority, and not as the scribes. And immediately there was in their synagogue a man with an unclean spirit, and he cried out, "What have you to do with us, Jesus of Nazareth? Have you come to destroy us? I know who you are, the Holy One of God." But Jesus rebuked him, saying, "Be silent, and come out of him." And the unclean spirit, convulsing him and crying out with a loud voice, came out of him. And they were all amazed, so that they questioned among themselves, saying, "What is this? A new teaching with authority. He commands even the unclean spirits, and they obey him." And at once his fame spread everywhere throughout all the surrounding region of Galilee.
Well, we want to take a look at the kingship and authority of Jesus, because throughout the Gospels, it's definitely presented as Jesus not just being a normal teacher, not just being a regular guy who can kind of see patterns and show you patterns. So what is the difference in what the Bible shows us about Jesus? Why is the view of Jesus as a good moral teacher really not in alignment with what Scripture presents in the Gospels?
Where to start? I guess we can go with a couple of things. With one, he receives worship, and a good moral teacher is going to accept worship and things of this sort. But obviously, this idea of teaching with authority, he's coming from a place where he can teach with authority. We get this contrast with, say, the high priest and stuff like that, who are just men like us, and preaching on a Sunday. I'm going to guess you often feel like you're preaching to yourself and not just to the rest of the congregation. Sure. And for Jesus, not the case. And but essentially, he maybe he doesn't just come straight out and say, "I'm God, get the memo," but make some very big claims along the way that leave no doubt that he is claiming to be God.
Yeah. I think that if you're teaching chemistry, you're noticing some patterns in chemistry, and probably they're not patterns that you necessarily figured out yourself, but they're patterns that you learned from other people, and so there's a hand-me-down effect. And I think with Jesus, you get more of the sense of the guy who made the pattern, not just the guy who discovered the pattern. And so is there anything that you see in scriptures that kind of bears that out, that with Jesus you're getting something that's a little bit more than just here's somebody who's observed the world and the way it works?
So, part of it to me comes out when he gets questioned by the scribes and the Pharisees and things of this sort, and he always just seems to know exactly what to say to point out the flaw in their reasoning and stuff like this. Like, hand me a coin. Whose inscription's on it? And give to God what is His, give to Caesar what is his, and at one point I think it says something effective like they didn't question him anymore. And it kind of shuts him up.
I think sometimes we look at that and we say, wow, Jesus was just really clever. But it's not. If you're the guy that made the rules, then it's kind of hard to successfully argue with that guy. And so there's some interesting things that happen throughout Jesus' teaching, and one of them is what we see in the Sermon on the Mount, where Jesus says that you have heard it said, and this is kind of you've heard somebody explain the pattern to you, but then he says, "But I say to you." What makes his teaching there unique?
He goes beyond just physically following certain commandments and stuff like that. He goes into the spirit behind the commandment. He's showing you it didn't just say do this. So, but this was the whole point of the command. Like it's like he's showing that he's the author of the command.
Yeah. It's something that I think is incredibly. It's easy to miss. It's easy to think that he's just, I think we should take this rule farther. But really what you get a sense of is the person who made the rule is showing you why the rule exists. It's not just an expansion of the rule. It's kind of looking behind the curtain. And part of that involves something very fascinating. When you make the rules, you can give commands. And Jesus' expansion of that includes people's minds and their hearts. And so is Jesus, in a sense, then claiming authority over our minds and hearts? And how does that set him apart from other teachers or even other kings?
Yeah, obviously is, and any earthly king can monitor your outward behavior and try to coerce your outward behavior, and they can even say you need to, worship me as God, as we've seen some and things of this sort. But at the end of the day, they really have no control over what's going on inside your head. If you want to be obedient in outward appearance but rebellious in your own mind, they can't stop you.
Right, right. And so there's a sense in which, submission is always in the hands of the submitter. Uh, but we hear Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount is showing an authority over our minds and our hearts. And what's necessary then to have that kind of authority? Why is it that I'm sure rulers would love to have authority over people's minds? And in fact, we as human individuals really want that. You're in seventh grade and you like somebody and they don't like you back, and you kind of wish you had that. What is Jesus showing here by his taking of that authority? What does he have that the average person who wants to have authority over these things doesn't have?
I think we've seen many examples of rulers who maybe wanted that authority, but oftentimes got the observance they could by force. Whereas Jesus, the only way you're going to get that observance is by love. And maybe Jesus is showing that he's worthy of such love, not just simple coercion by force.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. It's not just that he has the ability to know your mind and heart, which nobody else does except for you, but that he possesses the ability to reach your mind and heart in a way that other people don't. And now I don't know that it's not that they're not capable of it, but they're not willing to make the sacrifice that he's willing to make.